In the dead of night, when the world falls silent and even the wind seems to freeze in place, a faint mechanical hum began rising from the dark Ukrainian countryside. It was the sound of engines, small, steady, and almost ghost-like. Moments later, dozens of long-range drones lifted from hidden launch pads, their wings reflecting slivers of moonlight. They carried no pilots, no lights, no warning. Their target? Some of Russia's most protected military bases located deep behind enemy lines. What happened over the next several hours would become one of the most shocking nighttime operations of the war, an attack so precise, so silent, and so devastating that it exposed a weakness in Russia's defenses that Moscow desperately tried to hide. This is the story of the night Ukraine reached further than ever before and changed the entire battlefield. For months, the front lines had barely shifted. Both sides dug deep trenches, fortified bunkers, and layered defenses. To break through Russia's fortified positions, Ukraine needed a new strategy, something asymmetric, unexpected, and capable of hitting where Russia felt safest. Russian rear bases stored fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and artillery shells, everything needed to keep the war machine alive. These bases were placed far from frontline artillery range, protected by layers of air defense systems. Moscow believed they were unreachable. That belief would soon crumble. Ukrainian intelligence analysts studied satellite images, radio signals, and intercepted communications to identify the exact weaknesses in Russia's rear defenses. The plan that emerged was daring: a coordinated drone strike at night, timed precisely so all drones would hit multiple targets within minutes. The goal was to overwhelm Russian sensors and strike faster than their command system could respond. Ukraine had attempted long-range attacks before, but never at this scale, and never with this level of synchronization. The heart of the operation relied on a new class of drones: lightweight, long-range, and extremely low profile. Their engines were modified for reduced noise. Their frames were designed to reflect minimal radar signals. Instead of traditional guidance, they used a hybrid navigation system that blended satellite data with terrain-following algorithms. This allowed them to fly extremely low, sometimes just 3 meters above the ground. To the Russian radar systems, the drones appeared as simple ground clutter, indistinguishable from hills, trees, or abandoned structures. On the night of the operation, the temperature dropped below freezing. Ukrainian operators gathered quietly in underground control rooms. Outside, soldiers wiped frost from the drone wings and calibrated sensors. At 12:47 a.m., the command was given. One by one, the drones took off, rising silently like glowing fireflies disappearing into the darkness. Operators watched their screens carefully as each drone locked onto its predetermined route. The drones flew at dangerously low altitudes, weaving through forests, valleys, and abandoned industrial areas. Flying low increased the risk of crashing into terrain or obstacles, but it was essential. The lower they flew, the harder it was for Russian radars to detect them. Each drone used real-time topographic data to maintain altitude, adjusting every second as it sped forward. Russian electronic warfare systems, usually effective at jamming drone signals, struggled to interfere with this new model. The drones weren't reliant on one signal. They constantly shifted between navigation modes. On their screens, Russian operators saw nothing unusual, just another quiet night. The drones crossed over the trenches, some flying directly above sleeping soldiers who had no idea a historic operation was unfolding overhead. The night remained silent, unbroken except for the faint buzz no one heard. By 2:03 a.m., the first swarm approached its target, a massive fuel storage base supplying Russia's northern front. Rows of fuel tanks sat in the open, their metal shells reflecting the moonlight. The drones lined up for impact. At 2:04 a.m., the first drone struck. A split second later, boom! A massive explosion tore through the frozen landscape. Flames erupted skyward, illuminating the night like a sunrise made of fire. Within seconds, chained fuel tanks ignited one after another. The sky turned orange. Russian soldiers stumbled from their barracks, confused and terrified. Vehicles raced in every direction. Some trucks collided as panicked drivers tried to escape. Alarms rang across the base. Ammunition stored too close to the fuel tanks began exploding unpredictably, sending shrapnel flying. Meanwhile, the second wave of drones approached an ammunition depot 40 kilometers away. Russian defenders still hadn't understood what was happening. When the drones hit, the explosion was even larger than the fuel base. Thousands of artillery shells and rockets ignited in a chain reaction. Shockwaves rippled through the ground. Residents in nearby towns reported windows shaking from miles away. In command centers, Russian officers scrambled to understand the attack. Communications were overloaded. Some bases had gone completely silent. Reports trickled in. Destroyed warehouses, burning vehicles, collapsed buildings. It was a disaster unfolding in real time. Inside Ukrainian control rooms, operators watched drone feeds until the last moment. Once the mission was complete, they allowed themselves a brief moment of satisfaction. Months of planning had paid off. At dawn, satellite images confirmed everything. Smoking craters, collapsed hangars, dozens of destroyed vehicles. What Russia had considered untouchable was now rubble. Military analysts across Europe and the U.S. praised the operation as a brilliant tactical strike. Some called it a textbook example of asymmetric warfare. On state television, Russian anchors called the attack minor damage. But videos leaked online showed oceans of flames, exploding ammunition, and soldiers fleeing. The truth couldn't be hidden. Russian soldiers stationed at rear bases began posting messages online saying they feared another night attack. Many admitted they couldn't sleep. The successful strike lifted Ukrainian morale. For the first time in months, the frontline soldiers felt that deep Russian territory was no longer safe. Russia began moving fuel and ammo depots farther from the front. This cost time, resources, and manpower, delaying supply lines. Millions of liters of fuel lost, thousands of artillery shells destroyed, vehicles burned, weeks of logistics disrupted. The financial damage alone was staggering. The operation proved drones were the new kings of modern warfare, not jets, not tanks, silent, low-flying, precise machines capable of reaching anywhere. Russia increased night patrols and deployed additional radar systems, but experts said it wouldn't be enough. Ukraine had discovered a gap, and once discovered, gaps rarely close. This strike wasn't only physical, it was psychological. It proved Ukraine could hit anywhere, anytime, without warning. Fears spread faster than fire. Russian commanders now had to divert resources to guard their rear areas, weakening the front line. Supply convoys moved slower. Artillery shortages increased. Every part of the battlefield felt the impact. Nations around the world studied this operation. It demonstrated the future of war: small, cheap weapons destroying expensive, fortified infrastructure. Encouraged by success, Ukraine began preparing new long-range strike plans, some even deeper, even more ambitious, and even more coordinated. The fires burned for hours, the smoke rose for days, and the memory of that night, when the sky above Russia erupted without warning, left a mark that will haunt the war forever. Ukraine's secret night strike wasn't just an attack, it was a statement. A declaration that distance, fortification, and darkness were no longer shields against precision and determination. It was the night drones became more than machines. They became a symbol of a nation fighting back against impossible odds. As this war continues to evolve, one thing is clear. The battlefield belongs to those who can adapt, innovate, and strike when least expected.